Hey guys, welcome back to a brand new video. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the 2024 presidential election and my current prediction for as of March 2022, who would be favored to win if this matchup were to occur. So we're just going to hop right into it right here, no announcements or anything. But yeah, we're just going to fill out our safe Democratic states. So these are the states that you normally see being safe: the West Coast, Hawaii, Colorado to New Mexico. I'm not going to shade in just yet. Illinois, basically all the Northeast, the normal New England down to Maryland and Delaware states, not New Hampshire. Whoops, New Hampshire's not safe. Um, and Biden would also win Maine's first district by a safe margin and win DC by a safe margin. So Trump, on the other hand, he'd be carrying a lot of states by a safe margin too. He'd do very well in the Great Plains. He'd probably win Oklahoma by a safe margin. Kansas, in case you noticed, I hesitated, but I'm not going to do it yet out of an abundance of caution. But he'd win Missouri by a safe margin, to be honest. And here's a lukewarm take. I think Iowa would also be safe. I mean, after everything I've seen, there was a Selzer poll that came out a month ago that wasn't great for the GOP, but that's only one poll, and it's still 2 years before, and Iowa's getting redder and redder by the second. So I don't really see Iowa getting, even staying to where it was in 2020, especially with Biden being less popular and presumably less popular in 2024 than he was in 2020. So Biden, I think, would lose Iowa by more than 15%. Maybe it would be 14 or 13, but I just, I don't know, because I don't do, safe, likely, lean, tilt by margins anymore. I do it by probability because I got, it just seemed inconvenient at that point. So, Biden probably wins or probably loses Iowa by 12 or 13 in 2024, but, it's basically safe anyways. So yeah, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, Indiana, West Virginia, they're all safe for Trump. I don't really see anything else. You could make an argument for some of these other states, but I won't do that yet because I'm trying to be cautious here because we're still 2 years ahead. Things can change. I get that it doesn't feel like things can change, but things can change because in 2018, if you were making a 2024 or 2020 election prediction in March 2018, you probably would have had states like Arizona and Georgia as likely or safe Republican, and that changed after the midterms. We saw the polling data, and it really reshaped how we saw politics. So I don't see a rapid swing coming in 2024, especially towards the Democrats. But just we want to be cautious here. So Biden, I do think he would New Mexico by a likely margin, but it wouldn't. I shouldn't say likely margin, but I think that he'd win it by a margin that we associate with likely 6 to 8%, somewhere in that ballpark. And I say that because Biden is still going to do well in the Albuquerque, Santa Fe area, and he'll do okay with Hispanics, but Hispanics are really a problem for Democrats. And at 2022, they might win the 3 districts in New Mexico, but the bottom line here is that long term, especially in presidential elections in the future, Democrats are going to have a hard time racking up margin in New Mexico. So I think New Mexico is going to get a little redder in 2024 compared to 2020. Virginia is also likely. The only reason I don't have is it's as safe is because Youngkin did win the governor's race, and I get that it's just a governor's race, and I get that that doesn't mean anything nationally, but it's still notable that the GOP did win 3 statewide races here, including attorney general and I think in lieutenant governor. So yeah, and large is also likely. And so now we're going to move on to our likely Republican states. The normal ones, we got Alaska and Kansas as our first 2. We got to knock out right here. These states are both very, very solid for the GOP. I'll actually put Kansas as safe because in terms of probability, it's quite safe. But Alaska is going to be likely just because Alaska can get very, very weird at times, which is, I think, an understatement. But the point is that the GOP in Kansas and Alaska face unfavorable trends, but at the end of the day, they're probably going to win these states for a multitude of reasons, including the fact that Democrats don't really even do well in urban areas in these states compared to other states. So, in 20 years, it'll be interesting, but for now, it's going to be pretty solid for the GOP. Ohio and South Carolina are also very likely for the GOP. Trump, even if he does, I think Trump would be, well, I'm not going to say that yet, but Trump would be in a better position in 2024 than 2020, and it'd be very surprising to me if he lost either of these states. But I'm going to have them as likely because, they were still, Ohio was still single digits in 2020, and South Carolina might get a little bluer because it got a little bluer in 2020. So both these states are likely, but they're, very solid for Trump, probably 90% chance of going for him, if not more. So yeah. And I also think that Trump would win Maine's second district by a likely margin as well. But now it is important that we move on to our competitive states. This is the battleground map, right? All states that have been filled in, they're competitive. Some are more competitive than others. Not all swing states are created equally. But the first I want to knock out here is Nebraska's second district, which I have as lean because Biden might win this the district by 7 or even 10. Like in 2020, he won it by 7. The trends there are very good for Democrats. But at the end of the day, it's still weird because Nebraska's second district fluctuates a lot. In 2016, it was a Trump district. Then it swung like 9% to the right or to the left in 2020 and became a Biden district. He won it by 7. It wasn't really that close. It was a pretty solid Biden district. And at the same time, on the same ballot, the GOP won the House seat by 4%. So, um, that's an 11% swing just in one, just literally on the same ballot. So this district fluctuates a lot. It's pretty weird. It really depends on how the Omaha suburbs decide to vote. And so, they're getting bluer, and I think Biden would win it again, but I don't want to have it as likely or safe, even though it does trend that way. So yeah, that's your kind of basic number for Democrats. 212. I think they did pretty safe to, pin them at worst case scenario. Next, I'm going to give Joe Biden Minnesota. And so, this I think is pretty reasonable. I know there's a lot of talk about Minnesota becoming a red state, but I really don't buy that. And I say that because when we look at Minnesota, a significant chunk, I don't know the exact number, but I think uh, like half of Minnesotans live in the Minneapolis metro area, not the city itself, but the metro area, which is a very Democratic area, and the suburbs are getting bluer, so it's getting bluer and bluer. Um, and so when you have half of your state's population living in a super blue area, and then the other half is kind of split, it's never great for your party, especially in a state like Minnesota, where the Democrats, on paper should be losing because Minnesota's a very white state, doesn't have a ton of, college degrees. I know it's changing. I know Minnesota is becoming a bit more college educated, but there are, a lot of rural and working class voters in Minnesota that, unlike, Ohio or Iowa, they've got more Republican, but in Minnesota they've stayed with the Democrats, which is really interesting because Minnesota, unlike the rest of the Midwest, hasn't really trended right. In 2016, it was still a Clinton state. So, but the Democratic Party, I think long-term Minnesota could be tricky. I don't know, to be honest, because it's, so many factors at play here. But in 2024, I don't see it flipping. And if anything, it could stay where it is, but I'll have it as lean out of an abundance of caution again, as I'll say throughout this video. New Hampshire is also lean. And New Hampshire is a state that I never, ever like to be bullish on. And I say that because it is one gigantic suburb. You can say, oh, there's rural New Hampshire, oh, there's urban New Hampshire, but we all know that New Hampshire is basically just a massive suburb of 1.2 million people, whatever the number is. And so, because of that, it's kind of weird in that the suburbs swing a lot, and if one party has an unexpectedly good year, New Hampshire could just bolt that direction and decide to vote a different way than they expect. So in 2020, I had New Hampshire as a state that Biden was only going to win by 2 or 3%, and he won it by 7. So I was wrong, not on winner, but I was wrong in terms of margin by a pretty good amount. And the New Hampshire Senate election 2022, I've also got the GOP losing it by 2 or 3, similar to what I had losing it by in 2020. But this year, 2022, could be interesting for the Republicans in New Hampshire because the Democrats are doing so poorly nationwide that if the suburbs decide to become, like they were in 2016, that puts New Hampshire right in the field of play for the GOP because in 2016, the Senate race there was decided by literally, I think, 1,000 votes. So, in 2016, actually, it wasn't even that far away. I know it feels like it was. Actually, it doesn't feel like it was a while ago. It feels like yesterday for me. But politically speaking, it feels like it's a while ago. But if the GOP can get back numbers in New England, especially in the suburbs, to where they were in 2016, New Hampshire is competitive. And I know it sounds like a joke because New Hampshire is supposed to be the safe Democratic state, but it's competitive in the sense that once you get the suburbs to start swinging nationwide, you're going to get some really interesting results in New Hampshire. So to make a long story short, New Hampshire, I think will vote blue in 2024, but I do not think it's going to be as safe as some people expect. And so now for our lean Republican states, there are a bunch of these. So first of all, I think Wisconsin, and now Wisconsin's a state that is, I think, going to vote basically the opposite of how Minnesota votes in 2024. Now, granted, Minnesota, if the Democrats win it by 20, the GOP won't win Wisconsin by 20 because that would make no sense. But assuming it's under 5%, I think it'll be kind of the inverse. So if the Democrats win Minnesota by 3, I think they'll lose Wisconsin by 3, kind of that overall thing. And I say that mostly because Wisconsin is very white, very rural, and the Democrats still do weirdly well in a lot of rural areas. Now, don't get me wrong, they don't do very well, but they do well enough to win them the state. And if you compare rural counties in Wisconsin to rural counties in like Iowa or Indiana or Ohio, it makes Wisconsin look like California. Not even as a joke, because I know Wisconsin was more conservative in the country in 2020, but the rural Wisconsin is still reasonably Democratic, and the Democrats are going to start losing those margins at some point or another. In 2024, they're bleeding. Milwaukee itself isn't really gaining population super quickly. The Madison area is going to do fine for Democrats, but that's like the only region they have to be optimistic about. The rest of the state, I think, is just going to get more Republican. It'll translate into a likely Republican state in the future. So for now, I'll have those lean Republican in 2024. Next up, we've got the state of Florida. Florida is going to be really interesting to see in 2024, and I don't say that because I don't think it's like I'm not saying that because I think it's a pure toss-up, because it's not. The Republicans are clearly favored here, and I wouldn't be so shocked if they win it by 5 or 6. But I do think that Florida, it'll be interesting to see because, as we know, Hispanics get more Democratic with incumbents, or more, not more Democratic, but they get more incumbent friendly. So in 2004, when Bush ran for re-election, he did 8% better with Hispanics in 2004 he did in 2000. 2012, when Obama ran for re-election, and by the way, 2012, Obama did worse basically everywhere else. 2012 and 2008. 2008 he did really well. 2012 he did marginally well. In 2012 he did 4% better with Hispanics. In 2020, Trump, I think, outran his 2016 numbers by I think either 4 or 6%. Or yeah, I think it was about 4%. And so he made up a lot of ground in Texas and Florida specifically, even though he didn't win the election. So Hispanics, even though an incumbent might do worse, like Obama and Trump did, Hispanics still seem to swing towards them. Now, I don't think Hispanics swing towards Democrats because I think they have a fundamental problem with them. But it'll be interesting to see if Florida gets more competitive again. So that's why I say that. But at the end of the day, this is still a state that's going to be reliably Republican in the future. So I don't expect this to flip or be too competitive. But it'll be interesting to see how it votes specifically in the Miami-Dade area. Now, when we go over to our next likely Republican state, I think, or lean Republican state, I think it's Texas. Texas originally I said was a toss in 2024, but I think it's a bit of a stretch for Democrats because Texas, they've got some work to do. Now the common logical fallacy that I see on here with Texas, or people who think that Texas is going to somehow stay red for all of eternity, is that okay? So the suburbs might be trending Democratic, but it's maxed out by the Rio Grande Valley, which is trending Republican. Which, yeah, the Rio Grande Valley is trending Republican. And for those of you who don't know, the Rio Grande Valley is this area of Texas. It's like the border with Mexico. Hence the Rio Grande name, the name of the river that borders Texas and Mexico. But the point is here that the Democratic Party in Texas fundamentally benefits from the geography. And I say that because the suburbs of Dallas, specifically Fort Worth, Plano, Arlington, just the general consensus there is that, or not consensus, but the general vibe, you know what I'm saying? My brain randomly slipped in that word. I don't know why. But that area is the best area for Democratic growth in the state, and Democrats are probably going to flip Collin and Denton counties, which are the two counties north of Dallas. So imagine like a square. You've got Dallas County, the bottom, and then you've got Collin, Denton directly above it. Those counties are getting more and more Democratic, and they're probably going to flip in, if not 2024, 2028 for sure. They're pure toss-ups in 2024, but people like to, point out, okay, these counties don't flip blue, but these counties don't flip red. But the issue is that Collin, Denton County combined, I will literally Google it because I don't want to be wrong. They combine for just under 2 million people. And if we compare that to a county like Starr County or Jim Webb County or Hogg County, or just these counties in southern, Zapata in southern Texas that are trending Republican, they have 4,000 people. That's like comparing a grain of sand to a watermelon. It's just it's just ridiculous. So it's just, the whole Texas is never going to become red or never going to become blue because of the Rio Grande Valley. The Rio Grande Valley is so much smaller than the Dallas-Fort Worth metro area in itself, and Dallas-Fort Worth is the only area of Texas that's getting blue. It's basically all of the state except for the Rio Grande Valley. It just doesn't make any sense. Now, that being said, I did want to debunk that for a few minutes because I think it's important to talk about. That being said, I don't have Texas flipping in 2024. Democrats are going to gain a little, for sure. But they're still going to be set back by their minor losses in not minor, but their loss in the Rio Grande Valley are going to still set them back a little bit, not enough to hinder the state's entire trend for the next 50 years. but it'll hurt them a little bit. And so for that reason, I don't think Texas will flip. Now, next state we got here. Actually, no, never mind. Okay, tilt Democrat. This is where the good stuff happens. So okay, so first, give me Arizona's tilt Democratic. I know this is a tough call for me because I do have the Senate race going red in 2022, but it'll be close. Arizona, I want to keep it short because I want to just crank out this video. Arizona is, I think, underrated for how good it is for Democrats long term. Short term, 2022 they've got a problem there, but long term, the Democratic Party in Arizona is going to be able to gain, assuming trends don't change, gain in Maricopa County, make that county a county, similar to Clark in a way, because they're similar. They got the big cities, Las Vegas and Phoenix, and then they got the suburbs, Henderson, North Las Vegas, Enterprise, Paradise in Clark County, and then you got Chandler, Mesa, Scottsdale, Carefree, Glendale in Arizona. And they're getting bluer. These are cities that were reliably Republican. Now they're more competitive, and they're shifting their counties to the left, specifically Maricopa County. Maricopa County, I think, Clark County is about D+10. It's been that way for a few years. Maricopa will become, I think, the same thing at one point. Sorry, I'm holding a pencil and I dropped it. But the trends in Maricopa County, Arizona, are going to help Democrats long term. Plus, in 2024, Biden won't fall as much as people expect with Hispanics because he's the incumbent, because those trends don't go against his incumbents usually. So Arizona, I think, will stay blue, but it'll probably be similar to 2020. Next up, we've got Georgia. Georgia's, another tricky one. And Georgia, so Georgia's similar to Texas in that there are favorable trends for both parties, but the favorable trends for Democrats outweigh the favorable trends for Republicans by 5-1. And so Democrats are bleeding downstate in that they're losing rural black voters and they're, losing whatever they had with rural white voters. So basically, to portray this, with rural black voters, they're going from rich to, kind of middle class, and not in terms of the election, in terms of if the amount of votes Democrats had represented a share of money, they were rich, and now they're going middle class with that specific demographic. And then with rural white voters, they're going from poor to bankrupt. So that's just an analogy there. I came up with that on the fly. Hopefully it made sense. If not, let me explain it here. Downstate Georgia is going to be bad for Democrats in the very near future, whether it's 2024 or 2030. I don't know, but it's going to be bad real soon. The good news for Democrats is that they'll be making that up and crossing it out, and then making up more in the Atlanta suburbs. So in North Atlanta, because those areas have growing pockets of Asian and Latino voters, those areas are going to give Georgia to Democrats long term. So it'll be close in 2024, but I don't think it'll be close long term. So yeah. Now for the tilt Trump states, Nevada I think will be really interesting. I don't really know who's going to win Nevada in 2024, but I'll give it to Trump for now because I think that he'll do really well in rural Nevada. He'll probably won't do very well in Washoe County, but he'll probably improve in the suburbs in Clark County. And he'll probably make Clark about a point or so narrower, and assuming he gains in the rest of the state, that's barely enough to flip the state. It's a pure toss-up, though, but I'll give it to Trump for the fun of it. North Carolina and Pennsylvania, too, I think these are both, tilt Trump states. And, that's interesting for the Democrats because without these states, their path gets a lot trickier. But the point is, North Carolina is weirdly red in that it should be a pretty blue state. It has a significant concentration of black voters within the state, especially on the eastern coast or northeast, and it also has a lot of suburbs, and they haven't trended left as much as in Georgia or Texas, and so for that reason, I think North Carolina is going to stay red this one last time. I do think it's trending blue long term. That's not I'm not discounting that, but North Carolina is weirdly stubbornly Republican. I think that it'll last for a cycle or two more. Pennsylvania, though, has been stubbornly Democratic until it broke in 2016, went back in 2020, probably break again. The Democrats can do very well in the Philadelphia suburbs, but they'll have to do really well to max out all their losses in the rest of the state. And I think the GOP have quietly gained in Pittsburgh and Erie, which will be helpful for them. So, the Democrats have to really, really rack it up in the Philly suburbs, and I just don't see them doing that. So, give me GOP generally taking that one. Michigan, I said last time, was a pure toss-up. I'll give it to Trump this time. I'm not going to provide a reasoning here. I'm just going to say it's a pure toss-up that I'll give to Trump because I think that these three states are going to like to vote together. Michigan generally is the most liberal out of all of them, so you might occasionally see a map like this, but Michigan, I do think, will narrowly vote for Trump if I had to guess. Like, if you drag my feet to the fire, I'd guess Michigan votes for Trump, but it's close. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Whoops. So again, subscribing helps me to grow my base. If you like to see here and want to see more, subscribe so that more people can see it. Turn on post notifications so you don't miss another one of these posts. And yeah, thank you, and I'll see you in the next video.